Hello and welcome to Biology Career Insights, the podcast where we talk with experts from the field of biology to gain valuable insights into the careers and explore ways to navigate the job market in this ever evolving field. I'm your host, Dr. Manish Kumar. Today, our guest on the BCI podcast is the very accomplished Professor Pankaj Kapahi. With an illustrious career in aging research and scientific innovation, Professor Kapahi brings a wealth of knowledge and expertise to the table. He has earned his PhD from the University of Manchester, collaborating with the renowned Tom Kirkwood, and continued his postdoctoral work with the esteemed Seymour Benzer at Caltech and Michael Careen at the University of California, San Diego. Professor Kapahi's contributions have been recognized with numerous awards, including the Eureka Award from the National Institute of Aging, the New Scholar Award from the Lyson Medical Foundation, and the Glenn Award for Research in Biological Mechanisms of Aging, to name a few. He has published over 100 scientific papers, holds several patents, and is deeply involved in the academic community, serving on editorial boards for prominent journals like Aging Cell, Aging, eLife, and PLOS Genetics. Professor Kapahi's dedication to advancing gerontology is evident in his initiation of the first master degree course in gerontology at the Buck Institute. Additionally, Professor Kapahi is also the founder of UV5 Bio, showcasing his commitment to translating cutting-edge research into real-world solutions. We are truly honored to have Professor Kapahi on our podcast today. Welcome to the BCI podcast, Professor Kapahi, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Amazing. So we'll dive straight away. What inspired you to pursue a career in science, and how did you get started in the field?
Yeah, I think I remember when I was 8 or 9, there's a quote I read. I like quotes even now. The quote was that if you love what you do, you'll never have to work a single day. And that always made me, try to find things that I loved and enjoyed doing. And I realized I enjoyed science from an early age. Was it, maths, physics? It was less biology actually, but maths, physics, chemistry. And then I also got to appreciate more through molecular biology. And as I essentially during my, schooling, I think I was 17, 18. I was thinking what I want to do. And I didn't want to take the normal paths a lot of people wanted to take in, around me. It was just like either go to medicine or go to engineering. But I felt like I want to be a scientist. I felt that's how I want to contribute to the world. I think I would read about like scientists and the discoveries they would make. And I felt that's a very exciting thing. And I still feel the same way. Making a new discovery, finding something new, that feeling is really amazing. So I feel like searching, exploring, that's what I liked. I loved Star Trek growing up, and I think I think that has something to do with all this as well. Again, Star Trek helped a lot of people get into science. So I think that really got me thinking more about science, and then I wanted to choose a problem, and I thought aging is a very interesting problem, because why do we have to lose all the people that are near and dear to us? Is there something we can do to, sort of extend our stay on the planet? Yeah.
Wow, amazing. So tell us more about your academic journey so far. So where did you where were you born, and where did you go to school and stuff like that, right from the beginning? Please tell us about that.
All right. So I'm British by birth, but I was brought up in India, and then I went back to do high school in England, and then did my undergraduate and my PhD and undergraduate in England, and after that I did a postdoc, 2 postdocs in California at UCSD and Caltech with Seymour, and then I started my lab following that at the Buck Institute, and I've been there since. Yeah.
Amazing. Please also describe your current role as a professor and your primary responsibilities, and also about your current research work.
Yeah, so I have a lab about varies between 12 to 15 people, and I mean, as a PI, the main jobs are really to sort of design projects and come up with the next interesting question to ask. So I enjoy doing that with a lot of the trainees, and I think just as equally important now is like the mentorship. So a lot of the time is essentially also involved in sort of through this process of discovery, trying to train the scientists for the future essentially, and otherwise like day-to-day work involves fair amount of attention to manuscript writing and grant writing unfortunately takes a fair amount of time, but we try to use it positively in sort of coming up with you know um, designing and constructing projects so you can make it a constructive activity. So that's where most of the time goes. And there's a little bit of time I spend teaching the, like I said, the master's class that we have on gerontology. So I teach master students for that.
Wow. And normally the academic journey is like really you have a cutthroat competition, especially in the US where the system is quite brutal, right? So what are the challenges that you faced, while because the journey to becoming a professor is not easy. So, and there are many aspiring academics who want to be a professor, but they're facing these challenges. So tell us about the challenges that you faced and what advice would you give to, the upcoming scientists?
Yeah, I think this is a very important question. I see, and I kind of reflect on this a lot because to help sort of mentees about this. And I think, I guess, number one, it's definitely a clear commitment to what you want to do, knowing yourself and clear commitment that, no matter what, that's, you're going to put everything into that, giving it all. And I feel that really, and being positive has really carried me through from early on, because when you're totally committed, then you put all your attention into that, and then I think you don't doubt yourself, and then I would say things happen for you because you are just not taking no for an answer, because struggles happen all the time. Even now, even though you're an established PI, we often there have been times you run out of funding, right? And I think maintaining a positive attitude is key. And I think I want to sort of add to this, even more so than I was younger. I feel it is something you have to train yourself to. It's not someone is positive and someone is not positive. It really requires training and understanding that what makes you negative. Are there triggers that make you feel negative, and how do you overcome them? So I think it's a journey, but learning to overcome that and saying, okay, I'm going to stay positive is critical. The other thing I think along with this is some sort of level of, I think, finding meaning and purpose in what you're doing, right? I think, and that sort of adds to the commitment. I feel that, okay, science is the way that I have something to give back to society. So that's given me, a sense of purpose, and whether it's through teaching, whether it's through discovery, the idea that, or through this podcast, and the idea is that, you find meaning in the activities around that. And you can find that if you relate to that, whatever you have chosen as your career and you're committing to, you have to sort of deepen that sense of purpose and meaning with that, so it becomes, more, what you say, amplifies essentially within you. And then, and I think adding to all this, I want to say one key aspect of doing science is, you have to enjoy it, right? And I want to say, I've been curious, and I think curiosity is one of the key things that I think drives a scientist. I would rate that as very, very high. Probably the most important attribute. You've got to be curious. It has got to give you pleasure in some ways. And I think satisfying the curiosity, understanding things, that has to be fun for you, to kind of pursue science. I mean, the satisfaction of finding things, the satisfaction of trying to understand things, um, when that is a pleasure, then everything. I mean, then you don't have to work at it essentially, right? It becomes a joy. So I would say these are key attributes I feel that have helped me, and I think I. But there's no. You have to keep learning them. It's not over. I think I just want to say it's a journey, and there's no reason why you can't become more positive, why you can't become a better mentor. So thinking about these things all the time is a constant sort of constantly trying to prepare. How do you do better science? How do you do more innovative science? How do you um, uh, how do you teach better? How you become a better mentor? So I think those continue. Yeah, how to become more curious as well, actually.
Amazing. So, I mean, the take home message that I can kind of, I can understand is, first of all, I think the resilience, what you call positivity, right? Like resilience and perseverance, curiosity, and quite purpose driven. As you know, I've been following you on social media for quite some time, and I see all your posts or, you know, on social media either is to do with science or you're very purpose driven. And I also kind of came to know that you run FEA, what is Freedom English Academy, and that is also a very purpose driven thing. Although you are so far from India in US, and this work is quite different to what your full time role is, you still have kind of initiated this, and this is a very successful program. So please tell us more about this program. And after that, perhaps, we'll go deeper into the science that you do. But first, tell us about FEA.
Yeah. So first I want to say, I grew up in India, and leaving India was a very tough decision. On one hand, I wanted to pursue science. On the other hand, I did feel, and I do feel that I owe it to everybody around me that I developed as a scientist, and how do I give back? So I've always wanted to give back in one way or the other. And I have to say, I tried different ways, but I got very lucky. I next to the Buck Institute is one of the founders, is the founder of FBA. FBA stands for Freedom Employability Academy. So it's now become what the mission of FEA is to essentially help kids out of poverty, underprivileged kids in India out, and help them get better jobs. So so the name of the founder is Deepak Chopra, not the Deepak Chopra people know about, but Deepak Chopra is from IIT, and he runs a business here, a very successful business on supplements, and contributes almost $10 million of his money every year for Freedom Employability Academy. So what they're doing is essentially they're helping about. One of the things I like about his mission is he's not trying to get kids to go into IIT or the top colleges. What they're trying to say is, let's help the people who need the most help, and just help them get to the next level so they can get better jobs. So they're not focusing on trying to create brilliant kids, though that can happen with the curriculum. But they're really trying to help the people who are the most needy, and through coaching, giving them a combination of non-cognitive skills that people don't talk about in education, and also English is critical, as also they help them teach how to speak and sort of become more comfortable in sort of dealing with English, because English is highly strongly correlated with you getting better jobs. Basically, if you know English, you can almost double your salary in a lot of the countries like India. So the idea is to help these kids in their whatever their interest. It's not focused on one or the other. Whatever their interests, and help them sort of get better jobs. So then you can just imagine, and I think that they've done. He's very committed to the program and does it like very scientifically. For example, they've even done essentially a clinical trial on these students. So 1,000 kids that have come through FEA and those that have not, they were essentially assessed for their employability. This was done by researchers at Stanford, and they found that basically, if you had come through FEA, there's a huge positive impact, and these kids would earn something more than like 150, 200,000 more in their lifetime.
Wow.
$150,000, $200,000 over their lifetime is a huge amount of money, given that people would earn, these are kids in rural areas and underprivileged areas. They would be earning maybe no more than a few $100s a month, right? So to make this kind of impact over their lifetime is amazing. So I think it's so I've been part of this program. So I've now, as he lives close to the Buck, he came to the Buck and got to know of his program, and since then I've been following it. So I've tried to contribute in how any way I can. And as an educator, one of the things I realized was in all these sort of journeys, you need mentors. Mentors can play a big role in helping kids, and all of us essentially at any stage of our career, can help elevate you essentially and give you the knowledge that you need to go to the next step. It's really lack of information, I feel. If that can be overcome, you can really help a lot of kids. So what we did, started with my lab, is we basically we tried a few people who were interested. We said, okay, let's just do a group mentoring session with kids there. We tried different things, and we came with the formula that, so they have a class of 20. Essentially, you spend 1 hour a week, or 1 hour, in 2-3 weeks, and you just spend 1 hour talking to them about a lot of things like what you're asking, but helping kids understand different factors that are needed for success, helping them sort of sharing with them your story, and then helping them guiding them through different things that are needed to sort of succeed in whatever career choices they're making, how to think through problems. So we've designed a 6-class curriculum. So now mentors, it's pretty amazing. Now we have over 4,000 mentors who have signed up, and almost 2,000 mentors are active. And it's really exciting to see a lot of people, from anywhere. You can be from anywhere in the world. So mentors are now from India and all across the world, who connect on a Zoom call with kids, let's say in a rural class or in some urban branches. So they have more than 500 branches now. So you make a call, and then you essentially get an opportunity to connect with these students. So it starts with introduction and your journey, but then you go through a lot of the steps of like how to help them make better career choices, how to ask the right questions to see what is the right career for you.
Amazing. Just the scale of it sounds so amazing. Like if you have 4,000 mentors, I can imagine the scale that you have for, say educating the students. So how did Deepak come up with this idea? Because this sounds really astonishing, because you are actually increasing the employability. And so you said, like, because he's just your neighbor, you kind of, got associated with this program. So that's number one. How did it all happen? And number two, how can people contribute to this program? Like, how can one enroll as a mentor in this program? And most importantly, how can students, enroll for this FEA program? So please tell us.
Right. So first of all, I want to say, initially I thought it was, a program where we're trying to help kids. But I want to say equally, the mentors get a lot out of this, because these are some of the most motivated and grateful kids you will find. So just connecting with them, you feel like it's very life affirming, and you go and you can see what you're saying, can make an impact, and you can see it in real time. And these kids, I've seen the kids come through classes I've taught in some of those classes as well. They're so receptive and so grateful that you take the time for this. That already just creates a level of joy. And I also want to add that, studies show, for example, a few hours of volunteering a week has significant health benefits, even more than actually someone calculated. The benefits are more than even giving up smoking. I mean, so everyone should find some kind of time for volunteering, because how it builds up gratitude in you sort of makes you see life way more positively than without it. So I think Deepak went through, something similar in the sense that, he went to IIT, and I remember him talking about every day he would walk to college, just seeing the sights of kids on this journey who were, underprivileged and didn't have a home, or like we've all seen this, kids just picking up rags and not having essentially a home or school or anything. So, he wanted to do something about it. And what's amazing is he has done a lot about it. And he's a very special person, because he doesn't want to take any credit or try to,
He's quite anonymous, I must say. Like,
he's anonymous because he wants to remain anonymous. He does not want any, what's the word, like
limelight, or yeah,
limelight exactly. He wants to just do his work. So he is totally oriented to serving these as many kids as he can help out of poverty. I mean, so for me, he's a real inspiration, real life hero. And so, you talk about this, and a lot of other people are seeing this. Mentors who've joined, like, this is a very transparent and very ethical organization. All they're doing is simply helping kids. There's no money involved with the mentors or anything. Anyone can, if you want to, feel free, you can contribute, but it's really about connecting with the kids and mentoring them and service, essentially. So did I answer your question?
Yes. The next part of the question is about, how can one approach?
Oh, yeah.
So how can one become part as a mentor, and also for the students, how can one?
Exactly. So, yeah, so fvaindia.org is the website, or you could just Google Freedom Employability Academy. And on that, we've created a mentorship page, essentially. So you can just sign up as a mentor. You sign up as a mentor, and then they will connect with you and send you a batch of students, which you can essentially start over Zoom. We have a curriculum, so you get introduced to the curriculum, and then it's sort of, you start building a relationship with the students through that. Yeah.
And how does a student enroll to the program?
Oh, the students are, well, in rural places, basically it's word of mouth, because it's really hard. You can imagine a lot of challenges going in a rural place, trying to set up a school. A lot of people question, what is this all about? But it's a free, every day they're given a class for 90 minutes to 2 hours. And essentially, I think every day, except one day a week, and runs for a whole year. So it's up to them to enroll into this class. And then, a lot of kids are, there are a lot of success stories you can find on the website. But some, there's too many to kind of mention. The most interesting thing, like I said, is this clinical trial argues, it's really having a big impact. And you can imagine, once you get a better job, how many people around you can help as well. So that's how, I mean, usually each place where there is the FE org or a branch, people who are inside can find the closest branch to them and go take admission in there. Yeah.
So there are, like,
this is meant for teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's meant for teenagers, not any age, but meant for teenagers. So you've got to have some schooling, and then you're trying to essentially go into higher education or in taking a job, essentially, after that.
Amazing. Now, coming back to the science part of it, so aging has always kind of, amazed me, aging research. So for your, like you said, you were fascinated during your school time from the school time itself, you were fascinated by aging research, right? So was it a conscious choice that you pursued aging research right from the beginning, or was it like an accident in your, in your academic career that you kind of found this by serendipity or whatever, like by your research? How did this aging research came to your, life?
I really think it's, well, it was, I mean, like I said, I was very interested in science, so I wanted scientific problems to solve, and then I came across this because we all see, people getting sick around us, and we are all aware of the passing of time and how that ages you. And the question was, can something be done about that or not, right? Um, and the pain that accompanies that. I think so. It's dealing with the human condition, and can we improve the human condition or no? Yeah. So um, yeah, I think I don't have a personal story that someone in my family fell sick. Though I've seen many people fall sick, but I think it was just general. Why should one have to leave? I have a very happy relationship with my family and friends. I was like, why do we have to leave this? And can something be done about this?
Yeah. No, I am asking this because, so sometimes you have a choice of as a student to pursue what you want to pursue, and sometimes you're driven by, the kind of work that is carried out in the lab you get admitted.
Yes. No, I think I had a very conscious choice, and I even remember at high school I talked to, in England, I talked to the principal, and she said, what do you want to do? And I was like, I want to do this. And she told me, don't tell that to anybody when you go for admission. I mean, they were taken aback that somebody wants to, study aging and find ways to sort of extend health span and lifespan. And I think a lot of people still sort of question that. So and it was very interesting. She was like, do not discuss this while you're trying to get admission. Just get into medical school or yeah.
Yeah, but now that aging research has come of its age and there are a lot of advances happening, please tell to the audience about the current work in aging that you do and the exciting developments in the field.
Yeah, so my lab works on a few questions. One main one that's been we've followed is, how do nutrients influence health span and lifespan? Because it even to date remains the most robust way to sort of extend lifespan. Caloric restriction in mice, which was done like almost 80 years ago, you restrict the calories by 30-40%, and you can extend lifespan by 40-50%. I remember when I learned about this, I was 18, 19, I felt I had this special knowledge. I was like, wow, all I have to do is eat less and I could have an extra decade of productive life. I was like, I'm ready for this, right? So I've been fascinated with this, and I think more and more studies show this is it's key. I mean, if you think of the number of diseases for which overnutrition and aging are dry risk factors, it's very clear that taking care of your health, your diet and lifestyle is key. So we've been researching the genetics of the genetic pathways involved in that. So I was involved in the first study when I was a postdoc. I identified TOR as being one of the mediators of the effects of diet restriction, which has led to all the work on, identification of rapamycin as a tool to sort of extend lifespan. And hopefully there'll be a lot more coming up.
I must say that is one of the most path-breaking studies in the field, where like you showed the mTOR, rapamycin, and the insulin sensitivity has to be the core of, anti-aging or say.
Right. And I want to just give it a plug for basic science here. I mean, this was all done, the work with Seymour Benzer that I did, being in his lab, has had a profound effect on me in the sense that appreciating how using, simple model systems like the fly and asking some very basic questions can have very significant impact. So this was all really just trying to understand using the fly why nutrients play a role. And, there were TOR had been identified as a nutrient sensor, and the experiments hadn't been done at that time, basically inhibition of the TOR pathway and demonstrating that does extend lifespan. So we took multiple genes in the pathway and found that not only does it regulate growth and size, which had been shown, but is a key player in extending health span. And so I think so I work on also Seymour Benzer. If he was alive, he would have won the Nobel Prize for circadian discovery of circadian clocks. Actually, he started his most famous for that. And there's an amazing book on his biography and the fly field. Is called Time, Love, and Memory. Highly recommend that. I give it to all the mentees who come to my lab as well to read. It's just a pursuit of like how basic science can change. Curiosity-driven science can have such a big impact on different problems. So that's been recognized, like I said, with the Nobel Prize on circadian clocks. But he did several things which and then sort of inspired many people to sort of take that path. So we're still using the fly and keep on making very exciting discoveries. New pathways we're identifying for dietary restriction. Some are coming out in the next few papers. We worked on like circadian clocks, how fat mobilization, how increasing fat burning and physical activity can also be critical for extension of lifespan upon dietary restriction. And now we're actually undertaking something very interesting. It's just understanding the role of natural genetic variation in mediating effects of diet restriction. So the thought is that there's this pervasive idea when people hear aging literature. Well, this will work for everybody, and I just want to say that's not true. Because of the individual genetic variation amongst us, and we've done similar things in 160 odd fly strains. Basically, people get, different strains get different benefits of diet restriction. So one has to, which makes sense if you think there are genes driving this process. You can imagine for example, one of the things we're finding, some flies that are already long-lived, you can push that further by diet restriction. And that might be very true in people as well. Some people already have a very good, control over their metabolism and then don't get overweight that easily. And, you can't, there's no much more for them to benefit. However, for some people who are very sensitive to, the effects of diet, and I'm one of them, I'm a big foodie, so I can put on weight very quickly. But had I not known about all this, I would have gained a lot of weight and probably had, increased my risk for cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, and so on and so forth. So we're trying to understand how natural genetic variation influences aging, and we're finding very interesting things. For example, we think the genes that drive health span are distinct from genes that drive lifespan. There isn't a one-to-one correlation. One should not assume every intervention that's going to extend lifespan or health span will do the other. Mm-hmm. So we've demonstrated this with these 160 strains, and other labs have shown the same thing. Heidi Tissenbaum's lab has shown using different mutants in C. elegans that all these long-lived mutants don't necessarily make you live healthier for a longer time. You could be living in poorer health later on in life. So I think, and so we're finding that the genes that would, for example, improve muscle function with age are different from the genes that would just extend lifespan or maybe influence neuronal function with age. So we're now getting to specific pathways that can that give the benefit of diet restriction, let's say on neurons or muscle or on the gut. So I think as we've written a few reviews on this as well. So as this field evolves, hopefully people will appreciate this more. And I think we need to move in a direction where we're talking about more using precision medicine approaches, so people understand, based on their genetics and how their lifestyle, what are the best interventions for them to sort of improve their health. It's not going to be one size fits all. So that's a big push. And another area related to this is just understanding why is sugar toxic. So on one hand, dietary restriction extends lifespan. On the other hand, we're also trying to ask, okay, why is it that when you put more of nutrients, especially sugar, why are they toxic? So we're zeroing into on this process of glycation. And glycation is essentially, you've all witnessed it every time when you cook. For example, the sugars and amino acids, they react, and this browning that you see, for example, the browning of the bread or the caramelization you have, when you cook of onions and, when you fry stuff, all that is essentially production of advanced glycation end products. Now, unfortunately, this is happening at a very slow rate in our body, but it's happening, and it accumulates the ages accumulate and cross-link with age, creating sort of inert molecules which make the cell sort of um, you know, essentially not productive. So this damage accumulates, and glycation influences damages DNA, lipids, and protein molecules, and the combination of all this damage we think accelerates the aging process, and also pathologies like in diabetes accelerates diabetic pathologies. So we've identified a combination of compounds that can mitigate the glycation in vivo, and we find that not only does that extend lifespan, reduce insulin resistance, but also improves muscle function. So, and we're doing number of studies on this, and the formulation we because it's commonly used compounds and supplements that have been tested in humans. Essentially, we to translate this in people and make it available to people. This is available as a product from the company Jubified, and it's on Amazon, and it's called Glylo for glycation lowering compounds. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. So tell us more about, what is the normal natural mechanism to get rid of this advanced glycation in products? Is there a natural mechanism that your compound enhances, or how does it act?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, so interestingly, every cell, from bacteria to us, that uses sugar breaks it into 2,3 carbon atoms: dihydroxyacetone phosphate and glycerol 3 phosphate, and there's no other way. So every cell uses this way, and the DHAP leaks. A little bit of it gets isomerizes to turn into methyl glyoxal, and this non-enzymatic formation of methyl glyoxal is a problem, because this is 10,000 times more reactive than the sugar molecule. This will then go bind lysines, arginines, lipids, and DNA, and this will modify them sort of irreversibly. And the idea is that so you can have defenses. So there are defenses from bacteria to us in place to deal with this. So one, you deal with it by reducing the production of methyl glyoxal. You can reduce the leak in this pathway by, for example, turning down glycolysis, right? And then you could reduce the leak of methyl glyoxal. Then you can have their enzymes present to deal with methyl glyoxal, and some of them are, one of the pathways we have identified is NRF2 transcription factor called SKIN1 in worms. The activation of this pathway will produce more glyoxylases to deal with methyl glyoxal, and then the methyl glyoxal essentially will, like I said, bind proteins, amino acids, etc., and then they get cleared by the kidney. And if everything is working well, you can have some clearance. But again, with age, as the defenses fall and more of this builds up, it starts cross-linking, and the problem sort of builds up further. So the compounds are helping. We're finding in multiple ways. They're turning down glycolysis. They're activating NRF2 to make more glyoxylases, and they seem to also somehow directly bind the precursors of ages to prevent the formation of ages as well. So there are multiple mechanisms, all of which we haven't uncovered, but multiple things are in place with this cocktail that we're finding, and that explains why we're getting the dramatic effects we are getting. Like, we can extend lifespan of a mouse starting at 2 years old, and it will live another 30-40% longer.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah. And tell us also more about the circadian thing, because, I think that's also very important in terms of aging. So what are the general, because I know the circadian clock can be different for different people depending on their genetics. And as you rightly said, it's also for, the calorie restriction, right? So in general, what will be your advice in terms of, sleeping cycles for individuals? So is it beneficial to go and sleep on a particular time, or what is your...
Yeah, no, I highly recommend to people who sort of look into the work of Sachin Panda, who's done a lot on intermittent fasting. So for example, intermittent fasting, so let me just first explain caloric restriction. Caloric restriction, one way to sort of induce caloric restriction would be just reduce the number of calories you eat, right? But another sort of very clever way, which it's easier to comply with, is actually eat your food within a certain amount of time. So in an 8-hour window. And that's intermittent fasting. And I think the best way to do is a little bit of both. So you want to eat fewer calories, but it's easier to eat food. It's easier to skip meal than tell yourself, I'm going to eat half a meal. Once you start eating, the body, and we're finding glycation is part of this process. Once you start eating, you can't stop because the body kind of has these set points and it's telling you, okay, we found food, let's go eat, right? It's hard to just stop it, but it's easier to push and say, okay, I'm going to eat 3-4 hours later. So I practice intermittent fasting, and basically it's good to give yourself a 12 to 16 hour break after your dinner and your breakfast. And the reason I think it's very important is, and this is something we realized and the work we did, was we showed that to get the benefits of dietary restriction, you need an intact circadian clock. And the reason all this now makes sense is basically everybody understands light is important for driving circadian clock. But food is another trigger, or Zeitgeber, it's called. That is also both food and light are an activity. There are three things that influence the circadian clock. So that's why, so you don't want to eat late at night because let's say you're finishing your evening activities and you start eating at like 1, 2, or in the middle of the night. You've just told your liver, your gut, all that to start working that it's day. So the body gets confused. And by the way, the whole, every cell has its circadian clock. And we think they're wired differently. Yeah. And, because when you switch on the gut, then this, just that will come into play, right? But they are connected. And when you try to sleep and when you try to restrict nutrients, one very key thing happens, which is the repair process to start. So people have to, what sort of is important to understand is the reason dietary restriction or intermittent fasting works is you want to give time for the body to repair. So we've published a paper on this, like, for example, the renewal of the gut cells. That takes place because, gut permeability is reduced because you start either restricting calories or fasting. And all that's happening is, again, when you're fasting, you're giving through the action of these clocks, you give yourself time to repair. We've done a very interesting study on the eye. Same thing happens in the eye. Now, during the daytime, all the light that hits us, and which is sort of perceived, the eye tissue is perceiving that, circadian clocks play a key role in protecting against the damage due to light. And in fact, we've shown in flies that diet restriction will actually slow down the aging of the eye.
Wow.
And and that requires the function of the circadian clocks. So the circadian clocks play a key role, and therefore that becomes what becomes relevant as a result is to think about light pollution. It's another concept. We after we keep our lights on all the way till almost 12 o'clock, right?
And big cities like California. Yeah,
exactly. It's a big problem. So all that is influencing our systems, and you're not letting the clock do its job, essentially. And we've also published another interesting paper that the eye is a very critical tissue. We're finding not only does diet restriction protect, but changes in the eye we think are connected with organismal lifespan. So we can influence the lifespan of a fly just by manipulating genes in the eye.
Wow.
And this has got some further human relevance because now we have shown, we partnered with Google to look at what are called retinal scans. So you take a picture of the back of the eye, and by just looking at the retina of a person, you can predict the age of a person within plus minus 3 years.
Wow, that's mind blowing. So Professor Kapahi, tell us, so does that mean that, the blind people will have a lesser or a higher lifespan? Is there?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think it's very important how the manipulation to the eye is done. So there's not much data on that, and probably doesn't work that well in like humans. But I will say we are very interested in this question because we found that the flies live longer in dark. So I'll keep my conversation to flies. Um, and if you think about a lot of species that live long,
Mm-hmm.
they're actually either blind or live in the dark. Naked
Like the
wolverines
whale,
live
for
in the dark. The
yes.
bats,
Yeah.
the sharks, exactly. A lot of these animals that are so we think the eye is a very expensive system for the organism, and that's why it can be costly. And the studies in human, the good data I think in human on the link of eye disease with aging is more comes from people who have an eye disease. And basically, this is 2 clinical trials, like 5,000 plus people. If eye diseases increase your risk of mortality, so that's the thing to remember. And also, same thing we found. So let's say we had a marker for eye age, right? So retinal age, if that is at a accelerated rate, your risk of death is essentially increased. So how? But I mean, but the eye connects with the rest of the body, and I think that's the reason. And what we found in flies is if there's damage to the eyes, it's going to cause inflammation to nearby tissues, and you can imagine how that would become a problem. But as I said, so we're one of the projects, and I'm very interested in looking for postdocs to be interested in this. One of the projects we're very interested in is actually looking at cave fish. So cave animals have evolved to live really long in conditions in dark and without food. So I find them a fascinating model for aging now. We're trying to use that as a model for aging because we think genes that are maybe altered in those cave animals could help us understand how to sort of extend lifespan. So we're studying that as well as one of the projects.
Fantastic. Amazing. I'm all mind blown. I mean, I can just go, you know, as deep as possible, but we have to respect the time. But I will take the, liberty of asking one minor question about intermittent fasting because, a lot of people have started doing intermittent fasting, contrary to the fact that dietitian before were prescribing, small portions of food for many times, and they were like, it was totally opposite of what intermittent fasting says, that you can have large portion, but you give it a gap to the body, right?
Right.
But a lot of people have started fasting to an extent that they have deficiency in nutrition. And what do you take on that?
No, I think it's very, like I said, this people have to appreciate how individual this is. So some things will not work for everybody, and I think long fasts. I don't do long fasts, but if it works for somebody, it's fine. If they can see an improvement in their health, I mean, good for them. But essentially, depending on your age, depending on your body type, depending on the sex, I think all these things come into play in sort of being able to fast. But I definitely think there's like intermittent fasting. You build up your. It's like running. You have to sort of build your sort of capability to fast. But what you're saying, it has to be coupled with adequate and good nutrition at the times you eat. So yes, if you don't take as much protein, that's been a problem, especially in the elderly. But I want to still say something which is sort of not as appreciated. So many effects can happen of fasting. One of the things we see is you actually become more active. So I think that's a very interesting biomarker. If fasting is making you lethargic, then I think you're overdoing it. But if it makes you active, and that's what I notice, I think I noticed that, so that's why you have to titrate it to the point where you feel more active mentally and physically. I think you're maybe in the zone. So we need to get more biomarkers to understand for each individual where they should be titrating their fasting time, their eating time to get the most benefits of all.
Wow. Yeah. And lastly, into the science, tell us more about this insulin spike thing, because I think your first, the mTOR story. So you can tell us tell to the audience about the impact of taking sugar and the insulin spikes, maybe.
Oh, yeah. I think you're referring to maybe we had a paper where we combined the mutations in both the insulin pathway and the TOR pathway, and the animals lived 5 times as long. So this is we find synergy. We think in these two pathways. We think there are ways to get what I would call sort of really large extensions of lifespan. And one of the ways we have found is through the different components we're using in Glylo, because they seem to work together so that you can reduce the concentration and the effects of the single were better than the single compound alone. So I think there's synergistic pathways around there, and we think insulin and TOR, our data from C. elegans argues that if you can, inhibit them appropriately, then you can get a synergy in sort of lifespan extension. So DAF2 insulin mutants alone will only live twice as long. TOR mutants live only about 30% long, but the combination lives almost 4.5-fold as long. Yeah. With regard to insulin spike, the other work we're doing is essentially around glycation, that we think that the intake of sugar, we think leads to a sort of positive feedback where you can imagine you take in sugar, the body is now responding to this by increasing glycation, because it's sort of a mechanism in place that tells you we have identified food, go eat more. You can imagine this, right, in the times we were be out in the wild. If you identified a food, you don't want to eat just one mango and be done, right? You want to eat more. You've just identified a source. You want to eat as much as you want. So I think food addiction was an advantage in those times. Food addiction, ability to maintain fat was something protective. But I think with the constant access to food, this has become a problem. We don't want to do that 10 times a day. So that's where we're finding that glycation can actually be a trigger to sort of increase this food intake. And if we reduce glycation, either where we're doing pharmacologically by reducing by sort of using Glylo, but also by giving ages or reducing ages, we can see the same thing. Basically, can reduce this sort of positive feedback mechanism, so the organism actually ends up eating less. They don't see this sort of positive feedback and end up eating more and causing more sugar spikes in sort of sugar. So all that can be sort of maintained at a better level.
Amazing. So apart from the work that you do, I'm sure like you stay updated with, all the latest scientific progress in aging. Can you highlight some of the most exciting development in the aging field for the audience that is happening currently?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot out there. I'm sure people are aware of it, but I don't want to dwell too much on it because of your question of and this is something I learned from Seymour. You actually don't want to follow what's the fads that are going on, what's hot right now. Because one of the things it does is takes you away from what you may find. And there are a lot of interesting areas. So, of course, there's a lot of attention right now to, senescence and stem cell reprogramming. And so I think these are, there's a lot that's going to come out of it. But I want to say to people, getting into the field, you want to find other things. So there are a lot we don't understand about aging. I think we're scratching the surface. So I'll actually focus on that. What we don't understand how different species live long. We don't understand, like I said, the example of these cave animals. We don't understand naked mole rats can live long despite accumulating oxidative stress. So I think there are a lot of notions that need to be challenged, that we need to pay more attention to make the next round of discoveries. And I think that's where, for example, psychology is very important as well. So, on one hand, I've been studying, how nutrients influence aging. But if you look at human studies, the people who live the longest, here are three things that have come out to be important in a lot of them. One, people who are more socially connected do better. Secondly, this is a study in women who lived over 90s, people who are more positive live longer. And thirdly, like if you have a stronger sense of purpose and you're looking forward to things, these are traits that make you live longer. So interestingly, it's not about the biochemical levels of a lot of things we're talking about that is correlated with these people who live the longest. And yes, people keep looking for those, but a lot of it could also be psychology. And we've not done enough on sort of combining the, what are these neuropsychological factors that are improving health. So I think there's a lot of interesting questions out there. anyone interested in the field that you think it's more about finding new paradigms and sticking to those and finding how they work. I think that's going to be more interesting. Yeah.
Amazing. No, I totally agree with what you said. I was asking this question more in context because I've seen a lot of, lot of aging researchers. They have kind of, they're taking a lot of supplements these days, right? So somebody kind of advocates for, say, NADs and stuff like that. So what is your opinion? Do you take supplements, by the way? And what's your recommendation or what's your take on that?
Yeah, I have to say when I started, long time ago, and also, I didn't take supplement. I didn't believe that these things work, and there would be a lot of vitamin trials that would fail. But I think now we're getting better data, especially for model organisms. Like I'm amazed that with the combination of these 4 or 5 supplements, we can extend lifespan that much. And I want to say something very important. These are not the supplements. We're not giving them at the dose which they're used to overcome deficiency. So there's the RDA, recommended daily allowance of these of these things. We're going beyond that. So the levels of nicotinamide, like for example NAD plus that are used, or what we are using in Glylo, these are a lot higher than that. And I think at the higher doses, they almost have pharmacological effects, just like other drugs. So I think, I do take, Glylo. I do fasting. Exercise is key. But I think mental control, sort of some sort of practice of sort of staying more present, mindfulness. I think these are key things. Some of the things that I practice, but even take rapamycin from time to time, but I'm not recommending these to other people. I think everyone has to, find out what works for them and what is safe for them.
And I often, get the queries whether we have to take medical advice. But, my answer to them is that even the doctors don't know enough, right? So what medical advice one can expect from this field?
I think people who have certain diseases, they definitely need to be, like, for example, rapamycin is not going to be healthy for people who, let's say, who are obese and diabetic. Interestingly, there's an experiment where when you put it in the OB mice, it actually shortens lifespan. So when we don't understand what happens in different situations, some of these experiments are only done in controlled situations in the lab, mice which are overeating. So, but we don't want to know what happens as the genetics change, right? What happens if you're insulin resistant? Because some of the side effects of rapamycin include increase in glucose as well. So I think for that, it's important to have some sort of guidance, or at least have measure your biochemical parameters so you can track this. But yes, over-the-counter supplements are a little safer, but I think still, if somebody has any disease or they're taking other medications, they have to look into whether those medications would sort of interfere with the new supplements that you're taking. Yeah.
And you mentioned about diabetes. So, I mean, do you take metformin?
I don't take metformin. No, I think Glylo seems to has helped me sort of go from pre-diabetic state to normal state. So I'm doing that. And I also want to say, I mean, yes, I think we do have a problem with the sort of the way our medical system is set up. It's more geared towards care of sick people, and it's not there. I don't know when the next drug will be improved to help healthy people improve function. I think medicine, what we're doing is preventative and sort of trying to improve function in normal people. And I think I think a lot of there need to be some changes at the regulatory level, and that's probably the reason a lot of people want to take supplement, because there isn't anything out there for that. Because I think medicine. I think there's one thing that is out there in medicine, part of the Hippocratic Oath, which might be outdated, which is do no harm, right? So the Hippocratic Oath has this thing that do no harm. And the problem is with do no harm means, you shouldn't even be in exercises. You shouldn't even exercise them, because you could harm yourself by exercising, right? So the question is, I think with every intervention, even the simplest thing like you have fasting, exercise, there is some level of risk that has to be taken. But I think but we need to sort of rethink medicine in terms of prevention and also how to improve the normal health or normal performance. Can you improve upon that? And I think that's going to be that are some challenges in terms of sort of regulatory affairs. But I think that's a lot of what we're doing in the lab is going in that direction. So I think how do you translate that is the next set of challenges, which a lot of people are taking on. Yeah.
Wow.
So I think we'll get something, I hope soon. Yeah.
Also, please tell us about, Juvify that you founded, right? And what does it do and how it benefits the society?
So Juvify was, founded with two purposes. One is, I think, with the we wanted to translate our findings on the supplements that we had identified, given that they are safe and over the counter. We wanted to make this combination available to people who are interested. And secondly, I think I'm very interested in sort of, talking to people and sharing thoughts on fasting and how to make a positive health, lifestyle choices, mindfulness, all these things we talk about and we learn. There aren't ways for people to find them, to learn about them. So I think we try to two aspects. One, we do a lot of sort of outreach, sort of make people more aware through our newsletters and other sort of media. And then secondly, we have this compound, and we hopefully will find. We are also coming up with new products that would be useful, that people can supplement, that could be useful. That have been, they are scientifically backed and shown to sort of improve health. Yeah.
Fantastic.
I mean, for example, we understand, vitamin C, vitamin D should be taken. We understand. I mean, so some people say vitamins are not important. I think they're absolutely wrong. For example, I want to, the number of lives vitamins have saved is amazing. If you look at the history, I mean,
especially in countries like India where there was so much of vitamin deficiency that changed. Yeah,
exactly. Especially when people realized, the deficiency that was being caused when people were going on ships. So, but it's continued after that. Like I said, a lot of people realize, okay, this deficiency. And so, for example, in elderly people, vitamin D deficiency is very common, right? So there are a lot of, it's unfortunate again, because big pharma does not help with the clinical trials with these vitamins, right? So it has to be all done through NIH and research interests of the individual scientists and physicians. So, but there's not enough money to test a lot of these things, which are in the interest of the public health. But I think we are much more needs to be given to do sort of research in this area if people want to find sort of interventions that would be useful for everybody.
Yeah, with that comes my next question. So what are the current challenges that you face while doing research, apart from, funding is clear, one thing is a limited funding in academic research, but what are the other challenges that you face and what is your approach to overcome them?
I think I wanted to say, I was thinking about this question a lot, like what if the challenges that have come across, how do you deal with them? And I want to say number one thing, maybe it's been there since I was younger, is to just be prepared, right? So instead of being in the reactive mode, you want to anticipate things and prevent them from happening before they happen, right? So I think, and we should be looking at disease the same way as well, right? So for example, and just general lab stuff, or even if it's funding and all that, I think just being prepared is definitely one of the key ways to avoid challenges, because the more prepared you are, the better you can,
deal with it. Yeah.
Deal with it. Yeah. Like I was never someone who liked to study for exams the last day. I wanted to study way before because I wanted to understand the subject and not just cram it. So, and I think it's important to try to maintain the same way in sort of life as well. I think it's important to be thinking about all these things. So like mentorship, I think, is to be constantly thinking about mentoring or constantly thinking of science, so that you're you're dealing with these before then create then last minute essentially. So, but I think the constant focus is like how to become a better scientist. The same things that you know um, you keep thinking about them at a different level, but just how to do better science, how to mentor better, how to make a more positive impact around you. So I think you just keep thinking that, but just with um, time it looks like you've done a lot, you've made, but I think all that happens with small changes. I think I want to just make everyone appreciate nothing happens, none of these things happen overnight. It's small changes in you that change your behavior, small things that you build over time. You can see the effects of that positive impact around you as well. So I think it's believing that these the in the method and the process that just keep making improvement and changes, and then they will accumulate, and then you'll see something, uh, the big impact essentially. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. Now coming to the final section of the podcast, where like we always like to ask our guest about the advice that you would like to give to the biotech students, especially those who are aspiring to be an academic or a professor. What advice would you give?
Yeah, this is a great question. I think it's I'm gonna a lot of the things I said I'm gonna um, sort of re-emphasize. Um, I think I feel that at school, that in science we're not taught how to be curious. But I'm now realizing this is something you can actually teach yourself. You can teach yourself to be curious by taking more interest in things around you, learning to ask the questions. So if you're lucky and you've had great mentors, you get influenced by this and you go, yeah, that's the method that works. But I think it's something that should be more built into the curriculums, where there is sort of, you think about this mindfully, like what are the traits that are needed, than simply just stuffing more things in the curriculum, right? So I think teaching people how to think, I think is very important. And so curiosity, keeping your curiosity at a high level is very important. Staying positive, because science is full of failures, and just learning to deal with that. Again, that's just helpful in no matter what you do. But again, it's something you have to keep practicing. I do a lot of, I journal a lot just to write and talk to myself about all these things. And I've noticed that it helps me a lot. And there's studies showing you can journal on a topic. For example, let's say you want to be whatever problem you're suffering. Let's say you want to be a better scientist. You could just journal 10 minutes a day. You just do that for 3-4 weeks. It starts changing the way you think, because you start paying attention to everything now around you. So you'll start seeing things differently, and that's how you, I think, can make a change in yourself. So reading good papers every week, right, or a paper a day. All these things are useful, but it's all I want to emphasize is the value of creating these habits and building it into your lifestyle, to sort of become, so essentially become a better scientist. And again, nothing's happening overnight. You have to keep working with this. Enjoying the process is key, while you're doing all this. And if it's not, understand what's for you and what's not for you. And I think I want to, lastly, I think I want to mention this idea of ikigai. It's a Japanese concept I highly recommend people to look up. But ikigai is like to find your purpose. I mean, this is a sort of a idea that you have to have these 4 circles meet. So the 4 circles are doing what you love, right? Mm-hmm. And then doing what you're good at. And then do something that helps society. And then lastly, there must be some way to get paid for that, right? When these 4 circles meet, you can get more focused and get more deeper into something. So this was a great tool actually I introduced at FEA for the kids to sort of understand what they want career or want to choose. But now I'm realizing it's actually important in any activity I'm doing. So let's say you're starting a new project or a business venture, right? You could put these again and try to see, does it fit? And if it doesn't fit, how can you improve on it? For example, you're not good at it. Well, maybe you need training in XYZ, but you're really passionate about it and you can see it's a great opportunity. So maybe you want to train yourself, right? So I think I think about these 4 circles now all the time. For example, you could have 3 circles, but you don't have funding. So you need to go find ways on how to get funding or get paid for that, right? So I think these 4 circles can be a useful guide to sort of getting most out of the activities and thinking about where, if there's a problem, how to sort of reinforce, if you want to reinforce the whole, the other aspects, you want to make sure all the 4 are sort of working for you. And of course, giving back, right? There's always great pleasure if you can see your work translating into something good for people around you, then it's another positive feedback. You're more excited about doing that. Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. So Professor Kapahi, finally, tell us what you do also when you do not do science. For example, I think you're a person with multi-talent. You do a lot of things, but what are your hobbies?
Yeah, I have quite a few. I think I have 2 young kids, so spending a lot of time with them is a hobby, and a fun is something I had do a lot. But along with that, so I want to say I'm very active in sports. I used to play a lot of cricket and usually any sport, but now I play a lot of ultimate frisbee for the last 20, 30 years. So that's really kept me fit. I'm not a person who likes to go to the gym. But I've now figured out why frisbee or a team sport is really important, I feel, for me at least, and I think can help a lot of people. I think in the gym, you can do exercise, but you don't have the social connection. So the fact that when you work in a team, imagine how engaged your mind is when you have to play a sport. So I think having the physical activity with the engagement and the social connections you build and learning how to be part of a team, all that is very, very important. So I'm a big, believer in sort of playing games and sports, even board games and stuff. I think it's a great way to connect with others. At the same time, keep yourself mentally and physically active. So board games or other physical sports, these are all great hobbies I have. And then I love cooking, and now a little bit I'm doing more gardening. But cooking is another way. I'm now thinking of this differently. First, it was more I like to cook, but now I'm actually I feel, like I said, I mentioned the importance of social connection in everything we do. So I now think it's very important. I'm using cooking as a way to connect with others because it gives me a lot of joy to make food for others. So we've actually even started something we like this in our lab meetings. So every other week we have 2 people cook for the rest of the lab. And it's been a great activity, bonding activity, but these are some of the hobbies I have. Yeah.
Wow, that's fantastic.
And poetry, I forgot to say, but I like reading and writing poetry as well, so for my own interest. Yeah.
You never published them somewhere, right? Like, how can we get to read?
No, it is not published. But I remember last in December, I shared a poem every day on Facebook. It was fun. A lot of people really liked it. So for 30 days, I just shared Advent calendar, like leading to Christmas. I shared a poem each day from other poets, and it was really great experience, and I enjoyed doing it, and a lot of other people enjoyed it as well. Yeah.
Wow, Professor Kapahi, I would respect your time. I know we are over time, so thank you so much for your insights with us today. We'll again do the second episode sometimes. We'll go much deeper into science, but it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for your time early morning in California.
Thank you so much. It was great to be on the show.
Amazing. Yeah. And to the audience, thank you for tuning to Biology Career Insights. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast to get the latest episodes delivered straight to your device. See you next time. Bye. Bye, Professor.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.